Hello, McIntyre's Football Fan TV. We're here doing the match preview: England versus the Republic of Ireland, the old enemy. We're joined by James Allcott, and you may recognise his face from Ball Street, pretty huge fan channel across YouTube. And James has travelled to recent terms the Euros, the World Cup, and so on. Pretty big England fan. So we said we'd get him on and have a discussion about the game. So James, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, I am. My name's James Allcott. I've got a YouTube channel. It's called James Lawrence Allcott, where I talk about all kinds of football. I'm a QPR fan, so I know there's a lot of Irish QPR fans. So shout out to them. But I talk about kind of everything and anything really when it comes to the Premier League. I present for the Premier League as well at times. So a lot of the content I do is often trying to be unbiased. But then when it comes to England, that's where I lose my way a little bit, because when you're a QPR fan, you can be a bit neutral about things. But when it gets to England, I'm half English, half Scottish. But my dad's English, and the big driving force in terms of my sort of love of football. So following England the last couple of tournaments with, like you said, Ball Street, we've seen some amazing things, including Euro 2016, which feels like a million years ago now, with how it was. Like we jumped on the Eurostar and went to Paris like a few times to go to different games whenever we got tickets, because it was all so easy. And I went for a week right at the start of the tournament and had an amazing day in Paris after. I'm pretty sure it was England-Sweden. I think it was 1-1. Was that the first game of the Euro 2016 for you guys?
Yeah, it was our first game. Yeah. So.
Yeah, so we were in the fan park, and then I had a good friend of mine who was with us who went to the game and said it was amazing. And then we sort of caught wind of where everyone was going to be after that. And coming from England-Marseille, where we're getting tear gassed, to that trip was sandwiched in between being in Ireland on a street in Paris with thousands and thousands of Irish fans and not a single member of police there, because the trust for the Irish fans was so high, and rightly so. Like it was amazing, and it was quite illuminating, really, in terms of how England fans are sometimes either perceived or, I guess the sort of the rap sheet that they've got on them a little bit, but also just the amazing way the Irish people, the Irish fans were on that trip, and how they support their team, because it was that, like I say, that trip was sandwiched between two trips to watch England games that were littered with tear gas and running away from coppers, and for no reason. And then the Ireland game, you've got literally, honestly, I think it felt like about 10,000 Irish fans on a street in 4 a.m. drinking. It was amazing.
Sounds like a regular night. And you have a video of that on your channel, don't you?
So the Ireland one, that's on, some of the old school Ball Street stuff, literally just, me and my phone out there. There's definitely one. So have search Ball Street, Ireland, Sweden 1-1, something like that. And you'll get to see all the madness of that. A lot of Gary Breen songs. In that one.
No surprise there. He always seems to get a mention. But,
so should.
Yeah. Well, there's a team of Gary Breens.
That's it. I've heard. That was, of course, the song. Yeah. It was amazing. It's so good.
Well, we said we get you on, and we'll kind of get a perspective from your point of view. You said you're biased there, which is totally fine, because we're totally biased to Ireland as well. So it should make for an interesting debate. But I suppose, Gary, just to kind of kick it off, do you want to talk us through the history of the games? You probably don't have to go back as far back as 1946, but maybe most recent times. Although we haven't played each other since, I think, 2013 now.
Yeah, so I'll just do a brief, because originally when the brief synopsis, when the FAI broke away from the IFA, the home nations actually all refused to play us. So and England were actually the first of the home nations to play us in 1946. They came to Dublin 2 days after playing what's now Northern Ireland in Belfast. And it was a 1-0 win for England. And the return match in Goodison Park in 1949 is written into Irish folklore, because it was in Everton, which you know well, Paul. But it was almost a home game for us with so many Irish over there. A couple of hundred Irish fans travelled over, and we beat England 2-0. We were the first foreign team to actually beat England on English soil. And it's often misreported as being the Great Hungarian side of 1953. Partly because they probably maybe don't consider us foreign, but we were the first non-British team to win on English soil. Fast forward a little bit to one of the most disappointing moments in Irish football. And I know from talking to my dad, because he was at the game, and it's well documented. We were in a group with England and Denmark, and we actually lost in qualifying for the 58 World Cup. We lost at Wembley. Goal difference didn't matter in those days. They came to Dublin, and a win would have given us at least a playoff for the World Cup in Sweden. And we were winning 1-0 in the 90th minute. And a guy called John Attio played very little and for England. He headed an equaliser, and they said the silence could be heard back in O'Connell Street. And devastating blow. My dad, everyone, they were absolutely devastated. I thought we had a real chance of going to the World Cup. Couple of friendlies drawn together. First time I saw England play. Well, actually, I saw them in the John Giles testimonial, but it didn't count as a full international. 1978, we were drawn together for the European Championships, and a 1-1 draw in Dublin. Great game, full house, great atmosphere. I was only a kid, but really enjoyed it. Fast forward again. First time we ever reach a major finals. Today is actually the anniversary of Gary McKay's goal in Sofia in 1987. That qualified us for Euro 88. And I think, without question, sorry about this, James, but the greatest day in Irish history. I did not leave out the word football or even sport. June 12th, 1988 in Stuttgart, 1-0 Ray Houghton. First day in a major finals, really, really special. I was behind the goal that day, and it'll live with me forever. Fantastic day. We drew each other again in the 1990 World Cup. Our first ever game in a World Cup. Again, Cagliari out in Sardinia. It was actually a dreadful game. It's gone down as we've been involved in some of the worst games in World Cup history if you're a neutral, but I don't think too many Irish fans were there that day will consider it to have been too bad, even if some of us got really wet. But it was a 1-1 draw, and Kevin Sheedy's equaliser probably saved the day. England went on to win the group and reach the semi-finals, and losing on penalties to the Germans in Turin. And we went to the quarterfinals, our best ever World Cup, losing to Italy. We were drawn together again in the qualifying for Euro 92. And probably definitely one that got away from our perspective. 2-1 all draws. One in Dublin, a late goal from Tony Cascarino. One in Wembley, Niall Quinn. And but really one we should have won. One we left behind us, and ended up just missing out. England went to Sweden ahead of us, just like in 1958. So we'll just gloss over the friendly in Dublin in 1995 that never finished.
I was waiting for that one. Yeah, You've got the game's got to be completed for you to talk about it, I think.
Yeah, and a couple of friendlies recently. 2013 in Wembley, and which another famous Irish 1-1 victory. Shane Long, victory. And we win a lot of games 1-1. And in 2015 we drew 0-0 in Dublin. A pretty awful game. So another little bit of history, which I hope we don't lose on tomorrow night. England haven't actually beaten us in any type of a game since 1985. I did gloss over the friendly in 85 as well, and indeed the win in Wembley in 1980 in the qualifying. But England beat us in a friendly 2-1 in 1980. I think it was Gary Lineker's first goal for England, actually. In 1985, it's the last time we've tasted defeat. And the only UEFA nation, I don't even know if James knows this, the only UEFA nation with a longer unbeaten record against England. It's actually Romania, and it goes back to the 1970 World Cup was the last time England beat Romania.
Good stat, I like that.
Yeah. And actually England were due to meet Romania in a warm-up game for Euro 2020. So potentially we would have ended up with that record, and well, hopefully we can keep the unbeaten record going tomorrow.
I'm sure, yeah.
Some history lesson, Gary.
Very good, yeah.
So,
You've got. I do feel like we've dodged each other for a long time. Like I think there's. I don't know if other people have this, but you seem to get stuck with sort of certain countries a lot. And I always think when I think Ireland, I think Wales. I think Ireland seems to get Wales a lot. We used to get Poland all the time. And then I felt like we got Ukraine quite a lot, and there are those weird little patterns, but we've never really crossed paths that much in the recent history in terms of qualifiers, have we?
Yeah, we tend to get Denmark like
That's
all
it.
the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Wales and Denmark, and we hate them and they hate us at this point. Just sick of coming up against each other. Want somebody new, of course, but since we got such a history lesson there, just change. What's your kind of thoughts coming into this game? Because it's always much more to us than probably it is to you, because there's obviously all the history there between the countries and stuff like that. And that kind of takes into a lot of people refer to Ireland as the England B team or have done in previous times. But to you, is it as big of a deal?
I think in terms of derby games, this in international competition, this is obviously up there for sure. Like I say, I think sometimes you need games to create history, or recent games to create history. There's no real reason for Liverpool and Chelsea to not like each other, or Man City and Liverpool to not like each other geographically at this moment in time. But when games happen, things happen, and we all get a bit salty when it's competitive. So I think it is a big game. I think England fans, for me, I feel like there's two kind of England fans. There's England fans that support Premier League teams, and then there's England fans that don't. And I think often the England fans that don't support Premier League teams, they get so excited by international football because it feels more glamorous and a bit of a step up, and it feels bigger. Whereas often fans of those huge Premier League teams, it feels like a bit of an afterthought, and it's something that's getting in the way. So I think if you ask two different England fans, you get two different ideas on it. For me, this is a bit of a local derby, isn't it? You're across the pond there. So and a lot of players who play in the Premier League, a lot of players that we know as England fans. So I think it is a big game. And I think for the problem England have and Gareth Southgate has at the moment is we're sort of safe in terms of we're going to this major tournament, but you're far enough to allow kind of this sort of negativity, or kind of because of that distance, to kind of creep in. So this game for us is a massive stumbling block, because you'll have a lot of players who will, in this Ireland team, who want to prove a point, I'm sure, playing in the same league. And if England aren't at it, then they'll, that unbeaten record will continue, and there'll be a lot of bad press, because I think the easy press to go with at the moment, or always, is the negative side of it. And that's a little bit that's kind of creeping into what I'm seeing at the moment when it comes to the likes of Gareth Southgate. So it's a tough one for England, because, if you win the game, I think generally, we're fourth in the league, 36th, I think you said, Ireland are. We're expected to win the game. And if we don't play, liquid football and destroy you, then we'll get chastised for it a little bit. So, but you look at the players in your team, just looking at it now from some of the last few games, some, seasoned Premier League players. So it's not going to be an easy game at all.
Yeah, some seasons, a lot of championship players there too, but and a lot of players actually not playing for us, but we will get to that. But they're not playing for their club. But just kind of on England, is there anyone kind of, because it's a friendly game, do you think Gareth Southgate will experiment? Is there anybody there you're excited that maybe will get a run against us?
Well, I think the obvious one is, and I did a video on it yesterday once it kind of dropped, was Jude Bellingham coming in. I actually was this morning, I was kind of working on an England 23 for my channel, and it's, everyone's got an opinion, but I'll tell you what, it's really difficult to get a 23 that's got the versatility that you want to have when it comes to England. And when I was putting it together, the sort of the area where we're weak is the sort of centre-back positions, and then this sort of midfield area that, you're not a defensive midfielder, you're not a Jack Grealish or a Foden, and you're this guy in the middle. And that's where we're kind of missing someone a little bit at the moment. And Jude Bellingham, I think people are really excited about his progression. And these major tournaments often, especially with England, there are youngsters that kind of sneak into the squad and then become, just so fearless and exciting in those tournaments. And that's what I kind of said in the video, that he fits that bill, Jude Bellingham. A lot of people won't have seen him because they've only seen him because he's only been playing Championship and a few games in the Bundesliga. But I think Jude Bellingham is definitely the one to keep an eye out, because I think it would be far too soon for him to play in the Nations League games. But a game like this would be a really great game to blood him, to play him in this one. And he's a mix between a kind of ball-winning midfielder and a box-to-box midfielder. I think as time goes on, he might become an attacking midfielder, but actually I think his strengths are his kind of anticipation and then his dribbling in that central midfield area. So I would love Southgate to give him an opportunity. A few people are saying, why isn't Maddison picked or Barkley picked? I think the reason for that, when Ward-Prowse got injured, Ward-Prowse is the one who made way for Bellingham when he got a hamstring injury. I think the reason he's gone with Bellingham is I think he's excited about his progression, which Southgate's always done in terms of bringing younger players in. But I also think he fits a gap in terms of what we need in our midfield. So I think there's a real opportunity for him to play. So I'd love to see him play personally.
Okay. Well, so Gary, I wouldn't say that we have anyone that we're kind of looking to play, because a lot of our players that I mentioned there just before you spoke about England, James, Darren Randolph, he's playing second best to Fabianski at West Ham. He's not playing. Conor Hourihane now at Villa since Barkley's came in. Howard's gone out of the team. There's a lot of things that's going on like that. Robbie Brady's not getting in at Burnley.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of our players are actually not playing. So a lot of them are actually going to be counting on this international period to probably get minutes to come back into the team at club level. Gary, what are your kind of thoughts going into this? Are you worried that a lot of our players end up to match sharpness?
Yeah, and I agree with that, Paul. And I don't think James is talking about, I think, England experimenting, and I expect Gareth Southgate to experiment. And he definitely will have an eye not just to the Nations League, but to the finals, the Euros next year. I think Stephen Kenny's going to play his strongest team tomorrow night. As you say, players like Robbie Brady, Conor Hourihane, they need minutes and legs. And so I suppose we're using these games maybe a little bit to experiment, but I don't think England away at Wembley is a place to experiment, because I suppose we've already touched on it, but it's probably a different game for us than it is for England. Because for me, England are our biggest rivals, and with all due respects, I'm sure James would either name check Scotland or Germany or Argentina, and we wouldn't even probably come into the top 5, 6, 7, 8 when it comes to England's rivals. So I don't see Stephen experimenting, throwing in any younger players. It'll probably be as strong a team as we can put out, with a view to giving players minutes and legs for the Wales and Bulgaria games, as well as getting the best team at Wembley, because we want the best result possible.
Yeah, well, I think as well as that, I mean, you're kind of looking at it, we've only scored one goal under Stephen Kenny. We haven't won under Stephen Kenny yet as well. So I think this is a massive, game. If Stephen Kenny could get a win, which I don't actually think we will win, I think a draw is the best we will get. And that's me being as optimistic as possible. I just think England have a lot of strength and depth, and that's the only reason why. But I'm kind of looking at it, and I feel as though if we can get a result or a draw or take the lead for a long period of time, again, I haven't seen us taking the lead. We've only scored against Bulgaria in a 1-1 draw, Shane Duffy's header, and that was in like the last minute of the game. I look around our squads and it doesn't exactly fill me with confidence.
So, Paul, is this game bigger than the Nations League game for you? Because that's 3 days after, so it's quite a tight turnaround. Especially if you're playing, the other side of the coin is if you're playing games, you're fit, and so you probably recover a little bit better for that second one. So that's the only thing. I was slightly surprised that you might not make some changes in terms of your key guys. Is it just a case of maybe when I'm looking at the group here, you got 2 points, Finland have got 9, Wales got 10. So have you kind of like let that go, the Nations League? Does this become a bigger game?
I think for pride it is, but like as Gary's probably going to touch on it now in a minute anyway about the kind of the seeding for the World Cup. You know, unless we get a positive result, that's going to affect it because I think Slovakia or Northern Ireland, if one of them win their playoff, they leapfrog us. Is that right, Gary? The seeding?
Yeah, so I'll come on. I'll probably talk about it just briefly, I suppose, to explain the difference. We can really only avoid relegation or get relegated now in the Nations League. So it's probably the Bulgaria game at home is crucial because if we win that, we avoid relegation. So I suppose if you were to say to people, to Irish fans, you can get one result, one draw, either Wembley or Cardiff. I think nearly everybody would say Wembley and gladly take a defeat in Cardiff. You know?
Interesting. Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, it's football's about what you care about. So if you care about that, then absolutely. I think that. Yeah, I think what will be interesting. I guess for you to tell me maybe is when it comes to England. I think a lot of teams obviously. Yeah, Wales came and played England and kept the ball really well actually for the first half. And from some of the people that I've spoken to about this Irish team and Stephen Kenny, is there a bit of a move away from the Mick McCarthy style? You're trying to kind of get the ball down a little bit more and control the game a little bit more. Is it are there some sort of growth pains in that?
Yeah, well, see, the thing at the moment is we're in a kind of transitional period. It's kind of similar to when Giggs took over at Wales, and Gary always goes back to that point and refers to it. At the moment, Stephen Kenny's coming in and he's trying to change the style of play. It's more keep the ball approach and keep put it against teams, keep dominate possession against bigger nations, and he's big on that. And he's only came in since March. Mick McCarthy was supposed to take over for the playoff, stay on, but COVID happened. So then Stephen Kenny was naturally supposed to take over from him. So COVID happened, the playoff got postponed, and then Stephen Kenny was just. Because Mick's contract is basically expired, Stephen Kenny came in as coach, which was a bit ahead of time. So he was more kind of pushed for the World Cup, would have been more his time to shine more so. But he's been brought in a bit earlier. He's lost the playoff, so straight away he's been under pressure because he's lost the playoff on penalties. We were the better team, but we just can't score goals. It's not that we play really nice football now, but we just cannot score for the life of us. We do not have a goal scorer. We've never replaced Robbie Keane. It's so hard to do that. It's like you look at Robbie Keane's international record, 68 goals. It's insane. It's so good.
Yeah.
To try and replicate that or get someone who's going to score goals, we're looking at like Aaron Connolly at Brighton, Adam Ida at Norwich, who isn't really getting in at Norwich as well because you got Pookie there ahead of him. So we're in a transitional period at the moment, and fans are getting very impatient with the manager. Some fans, myself and Gary, would be more patient. Kind of, we could see the bigger picture. Like there is signs there that we are getting better, and there's players who've stepped up to the mark and like not gone hiding. Jason Malumbi, again, another Brighton player, has been fantastic. You may have seen him in the championship last year with Millwall.
Yeah.
Really highly rated. But Stephen Kenny really, really likes him. He's brought through a couple of players like him, Darragh O'Shea at West Brom as well. So there's a couple of good young players coming through the team there. But ultimately, it's about scoring the goals. And you said there, would you like to see us win the Nations? I'd like to see us win all the games, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Realistically speaking, I think a draw is realistic against England. A win would be a really push, and a loss is probably more likely, but I'm hoping not, obviously. Wales game, if Bale's out, I don't see why we can't get a result. I mean, I don't think they were that good in the Aviva. I thought we played better than them. I thought we probably had the better of the chances. Probably could have beaten. It was a bit of a poor game. And Bulgaria, I think we should beat. So it's just a matter of kind of getting a couple of goals, and I think then the manager will get a bit of breathing space. That's all that is. Yeah,
I think it's tough. Like the great Irish sides, they had some amazing players in them, and so when you lose, even 2002, you had so many amazing players in that team, and then a couple of world class players. Robbie Keane was he was at that level. Duffy was a joke in that tournament, an absolute joke in that tournament, and then some really quality players who, like you say, playing Premier League games week in, week out, captains of their clubs as well. I think Kenny Cunningham was still there, wasn't he? Matt Holland was still playing there. Ian Hart, left back. So when I look at these players now, any criticism towards Kenny is it's got to be tough to take, because name me a player who's anywhere near that level at this moment in time. It looks like you're kind of playing Hendrick as this sort of attacking midfield. I always think with your midfielders in any team, like, giving it from maybe a QPR point of view, is sometimes there are players that will get in your team, but if they're playing in an advanced role, that kind of says something about the whole squad. And if they're playing in a more defensive role, then that says something as well. And so someone like, if Hendrick's, in your team and he's not the main man, then that means you've got an all right team. But if he is the main man, then you're probably a little short, right?
Yeah, I think he's on borrowed time at this point. A lot of Irish fans are getting frustrated with him. They don't really see what he brings to the team. And there's someone there at Derby, Jason Knight, coming through at the moment, who Rooney is, he's spoken very highly about a lot of times. He comes out in the media and speaks about him a lot. So we have high hopes for Jason Knight, but he's not in the squad this time around. He's going to try and help the 21s qualify for the tournament for first time in our history. So it is a team in basic transition, but you're talking about midfield there, and we're obviously going to come on and talk about it now. But we did have Declan Rice obviously in our ranks. He played 3 full friendlies for us, and then decided to switch his allegiances. Jack Grealish played under 21s for us, and then went to England, which I don't really have as much. I don't have as much, I suppose, ill feelings towards Grealish as I would Rice. And then Gary's going to come on to it, but Michael Keane played underage for Ireland and then playing for England as well. See, the way Irish fans look at it is they used Ireland as a way to kind of put themselves out there on a pedestal to be looked at by England, and then as soon as England came along, they decided. But again, the only one I have a real problem with is Rice. But what are your views on it, and do you see that making it a bit of a feisty affair, especially from a tackling point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if Rice starts, I think from England's point of view, it'll be interesting to see who plays in that midfield from our squad. Just looking at it now, you've got, it might be one where I could see him not even playing him, which would be very frustrating for Irish fans, because I think Irish fans would quite happily like to see him get crunched, which I completely understand. I think you've got to kind of retain the sort of dignity of international football time. So when you get senior caps, I totally understand why Irish fans will be annoyed at that, because you've made a decision there. I think by that point you have to make a decision. Obviously, like, the world has, so many people have got dual nationality. So the difficulty is always there in terms of who you should choose. But I think once you play a senior cap, if you're old enough to play senior football, you're probably old enough to make a decision. And so I can understand why Irish fans are really annoyed by him. And should, like, someone should leave one on him. Like, that's part of the fun, isn't it? I think that would make it a lot spicier, which would be interesting to see. And I think he's a combative midfielder as well, so he's going to go and try and win tackles. And I think he'll have it in the back of his mind if he starts. I wonder though, because I wonder if you might give Bellingham a chance in a game like this. I think it would be a good fit for him to play. Like Harry Winks is in the squad as well, who I don't think would start in the Belgium game. Same goes maybe for Henderson. They might not want to start him in this game as well. I'm intrigued. I think the big one that we'll all be intrigued about is if Jack Grealish plays, because there's the clamour for Grealish to start for England is understandable, but it's also a bit again unfair on the long-term work that Southgate's put in, because he seems to be sticking with this 3-4-3, and he's trying to kind of find a way to make it work. And Grealish sort of naturally in his position doesn't totally fit that way of playing, that system. And then even in that Belgium game that we recently played, we won that game. And yet people were just going, oh, he doesn't like Grealish, which I don't think is true, because he's in the squad. So because of that, it'd be interesting to see how strong-willed Southgate is, because naturally, if you win a game against a team, you generally play a similar team. So I wouldn't be surprised, and I wouldn't be surprised if England fans get really angry about it, which, again, I think is a little bit short-sighted. But I wouldn't be surprised if actually Rice doesn't play and Grealish does play. That's what I could see happening in this game, to be honest, because I could see Winks starting, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I think Grealish has started the season unbelievable at Aston Villa, so I think it'd be madness not to play him. I think with Declan Rice, you're kind of keeping him out of the limelight in many ways if he doesn't play. But Gary, what are your views kind of coming into this game with the three players mentioned? Would you like to see them play against us, or would you care if they played or not?
Yeah, I'm kind of more focused on our team, to be honest. So I don't really care. Maybe it's better if Declan Rice doesn't play, particularly kind of given the history. Jack Grealish switched at under 21 level. It's still a sore point. I mean, both sides of his family, I know he grew up in Birmingham, but both sides of his family, very strong Irish influence. Michael Keane switched back in 2010, I think, at under 17 level. And he played, I think, under 17, or certainly a lot of underage levels for England. So it's not so bad. We'll also be looking at the likes of James Maddison, Harry Maguire, Harry Kane, as probably ones who got away. Now, look, they were always committed to England, I accept that, but all were eligible for us. And James talks about dual nationality. It's quite common. I actually go back to the 2013 friendly, because I remember they were selling half and half scarves outside Wembley, and I thought, what stupid idiot did half and half scarves? But then I go into the away end, and I couldn't believe it because so many people were wearing them, including my cousin, who's she left Ireland, married to an Englishman, and there's 4 kids over there. So I actually got them tickets. They were in the away end, but I mean, it's probably typical that her children are dual nationals. I mean, and they probably support England and Ireland and at various times. So. I don't know. It's
the problem is it waters down the tribalism a little bit, doesn't it? Like I say, I'm half Scottish, and so I remember Euro '96, and obviously always caring about Scotland when they played games, but generally my focus was England because of my dad. But then when I went to that game, I actually went with my mum, who's Scottish, because my dad had done his Achilles, and I felt weird. I felt really weird going to the game and kind of thinking, I wouldn't mind a draw here. Which is bizarre. So it is weird. It is really, really weird. But I mean, I come back to it. I think criticism towards Declan Rice, from what I know of the story, feels fair, because there is for me there is that cut-off point of playing senior caps, and once you've done that, then it does feel a bit like you've cheated on your wife.
Now, having said that, had we won the penalty shootout in Slovakia, we'd actually be playing Northern Ireland in Windsor Park tomorrow night with a place in the Euros at stake. Wow. And Shane Duffy and James McLean, who both came through the Northern Ireland underage setup, would have been playing. And it's the same thing as Jack Grealish and okay, they didn't play at senior level, but we're certainly very close to played right up to under 21s. So, and Shane Duffy actually sat in the bench for a competitive game for Northern Ireland. So if he'd come off the bench, he would have been tied to them.
Yeah. Life makes hypocrites of us all, doesn't it? I think the thing. Yeah.
Well, just lastly, because I think this has been a great chat, to be honest. But just your score prediction, James. How do you actually see the game going?
I think I'm really intrigued to see Ireland, because I think that, even things like that feels like a bit of a clue when you're talking about the under 21s. The fact that they're, so they're on the cusp of maybe getting into the tournament. Is that right?
They need 2 wins, yeah.
Right. So I think that highlights that. I think Southgate did that for England, which again I think gets forgotten about a little bit, because we have got this new exciting generation of really good players.
Well,
but,
James, that's it, because Stephen Kenny was actually the manager of the under 21s before he got bumped up. So yeah.
But my point is that Ireland, I guess it feels like when there's that dearth of talent maybe in the senior team at the moment, in terms of those 1 or 2 guys that can elevate you, like Gareth Bale does for Wales, then you might as well look back a little bit and invest in that under 21s and not take players out of there, because they can kind of have some success together and that can carry on through, like England with the under 17s and under 20s and stuff like that. So I'm intrigued to see the different style of play. When I think of Ireland, I think of one way of playing, really, which is that kind of, I enjoy that kind of football. I loved watching Ireland back in the day when you had Niall Quinn up there and it's proper old school 4-4-2. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But the game is evolving, and therefore you probably want your team to as well. So I'm intrigued to see how much of a fight they can kind of put up. But I'm also excited to see this England team, and it may be a new look England midfield as well. So I expect England to win. If I'm honest, I think we'd break you. I would hope that we would be able to break you down, and we'd have probably got quite a lot of strength off the bench, which I think is another thing maybe to remember in a friendly, that the game gets disjointed in the second half, and often a little bit more quality kind of gets you over the line. So look, we beat Wales 3-0. You're not going to like it, but I wouldn't mind a similar result if I'm honest. But yeah, so I think I would go down that road because like I said, I don't think we've ever had depth like this in the England squad really. So hopefully we can have a nice juicy win, and everyone can get off Gareth's back. That would be nice for me. I would like that. Okay. Sorry. You hate me, don't you?
No, I don't like that, but you're entitled to your opinion. Gary, what is your score prediction?
Yeah, I really think this game's come at the wrong time, and we're talking about seeding, World Cup qualification and everything, and it's an early stage in the development. So I'm not too confident, to be honest. And I suppose my heart says we can pull off another 1-1 win, but I'm inclined to say England are going to shade it maybe 2-0.
So just in case anyone actually is watching this and thinks that Gary's making mistakes saying 1-1 win, he actually means a draw, because we tend to celebrate 1-1 draws as a win. So just in case that went over your head and you start giving them pelts in the comments, I actually am going to go for a 1-1. So I suppose I'll call it a win, but I and that's just me being very optimistic. I would like to see us score. I would like to see us take the lead in the game and see how we can handle that, because I've mentioned that on a few shows previous in our last couple of games that I haven't seen us taking the lead, and I'd like to see what we'd be like taking the lead rather than chasing the lead. So yeah, I go with a 1-1.
Just so people understand, this game is absolutely crucial for the World Cup draw next month. Because, as Paul mentioned, in the world rankings, but the crucial thing from the world rankings point of view is in the UEFA nations, we're actually 20th. And the World Cup draw, we're currently just on the cusp of being second seeds for the World Cup draw. Top 10 nations, 10 groups, 10 winners to qualify. If we can stay in 20th place or finish higher, we'll be second seeds. Just behind us are Slovakia and Northern Ireland. And part of the problem is that if we were to lose tomorrow night, we'd lose 3.2 ranking points. A win, we'd actually gain 6.8, and a draw would be 1.8 of a gain. Problem is, Slovakia play Northern Ireland at the same time in Belfast. If Northern Ireland win that game in 120 minutes, they get 12.7 ranking points. And if Slovakia win the game in 120 minutes, they get 12.3 ranking points. So either of them will jump ahead of us, even if we win at Wembley at the same time. Best we can hope for is actually Northern Ireland to win on penalties, because that would give them 6.4 ranking points, because they're actually behind Slovakia as well. And I know it gets very complicated, but basically, if we can get any sort of a result, get a draw at Wembley and Northern Ireland win on penalties, we will keep our second seeding going into the Wales and Bulgaria games. If Slovakia win and we lose, we'll already be so far behind them that possibly even a win in Cardiff and a win against Bulgaria may not be enough. It depends on how other countries do as well. So seedings are absolutely crucial, but at the moment, it's not looking good to keep our second seeds just with the way the fixtures are falling.
Yeah, well, wait to finish that on the down.
That might help though. Hopefully,
you can clip it in some other time. You know?
Hopefully, the players totally understand that, because I think that might give them a little bit of extra zip. And you never know with these games, that can, especially in a friendly game, because the England players will be looking to impress because there's competition, but won't have that same desire if it means the long-term opportunity of getting to a major tournament. So I think it's a great point to make, Gary.
Yeah, if anything, there's initiative there to try more to get a win. Not that, I mean, England at Wembley. I mean, if you can't get yourself up for that, I don't know. maybe you should question your nationality. But yeah, listen, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on, James. Where can people follow you if they're looking to follow you?
Just search my name, I guess, in YouTube's the main place where you can find me. James Allcott, ALLCOTT. Also stream on Twitch quite often. Football Manager in particular. We're sort of starting a new save. The new game's just come out, so if you do like Twitch, come have a look.
Okay, and then just Gary, thanks very much. You enjoy getting yourself, drive safe, and enjoy the game over there in Wembley. Guys, don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe as well. We're close to 9,000 subscribers, so if you can please help us get there, that would be fantastic. And we'll speak to you soon. Come on, you boys in green.